Welcome to the Hidden City Podcast. I'm Grant.
And I'm Doug, and we're here to share some of the incredible stories and people from Oak Cliff that you might not know.
We're going to sit down with some of the visionaries, craftsmen, and business owners who have shaped Oak Cliff into what it is today.
Oak Cliff is on the south bank of the Trinity River, a few miles south of downtown Dallas. While technically it was part of Dallas, it was its own city for a long time, and it still has that independent spirit.
We'll dive into the history and the spirit of this place, exploring the different challenges and successes that defined it.
This is The Hidden City, a podcast about the people and the stories that make Oak Cliff extraordinary.
Welcome to this episode of the Hidden City Podcast. Today we are very lucky to have a special guest on this show. Fred Durham, the director of the C.S. Lewis Institute here in Dallas, Texas, is here with us. Thanks for coming on the show, Fred.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's really a joy to be here.
This is awesome, Fred.
We've had the pleasure of getting to know each other over the last few months. Fred has lived in Oak Cliff on and off his whole life. So, Fred, you've seen a lot over here in the last many years.
We have seen a lot.
Yeah.
And I honestly think all of it, in the long run, for the better. I love Oak Cliff as it is now, not just what it used to be.
Yeah,
sure.
And of course, everything changes. When I was born in 1947, it was right after the Second World War, and everything in Oak Cliff, in essence, was devoted to those people who were coming back home.
Wow!
All of the development that you see that is south, perhaps, of Clarendon, were homes that were being built for returning families, for soldiers and for returning families and others. And it was also during the baby boom, so every street, I grew up right by Keys Park. Keys Park was my backyard, and
that's a good backyard.
Oh, it's a wonderful. I roamed all over that place, and only got picked up by the police once and taken home for misbehaving.
Hey, one time's pretty good.
One time's all right. I'd gotten.
One time's great. That's better than we can say.
It's probably not the only time I should have been picked up, but it was the only.
It was the only actual time.
But I'd actually for Christmas gotten a real bow and arrow set, and decided that shooting at targets was not sufficient, so I had gone hunting in Keys Park, and the officer thought that was not a good idea and took me home. So
what a ridiculous idea that
is. But
the audacity. Well, I bet there was good hunting in Keys Park at that point.
I would guess. I never saw anything. But I shot at rocks and trees and everything else.
How funny, Fred. That's awesome.
But it was early 1950s, and the entire area was covered with children. This was the baby boom.
Awesome.
And every block was just filled with young families and with children, and so that was in a sense a magical time.
Yeah.
Or maybe I just remember it as a magical time. But there was.
It's interesting hearing that, because we had David Spence on the show at one point, and he was sharing how maybe it was in like the 80s or something. Him and his wife were the only ones that had kids in the entire street, and everyone called them the breeders. And so it's like you got the 40s, 50s, and then you got like the 80s, 90s. Like there's different
and
they're different.
It's so funny even now, though. I think about Elmwood, and I'm every other house is a young couple with kids. It feels like it just seems that way. But
and now, after being away, not entirely away, because I've lived over half my life in Oak Cliff. As a Methodist minister, was moved all over North Texas. But came back, pastored my home church for 10 years at Tyler Street. Then when we retired, came
Tyler Street on 10th Street?
and Polk.
10th and Polk. Okay, nice.
Oddly enough, it's not on Tyler Street.
Yeah, that's funny.
Tyler is one block over. It started on Tyler Street, but moved to 10th and Polk.
You could probably. I mean, we need to get into this book because we are in the summer reading club a little bit. Right?
Oh, well, that's right.
But I have a question. That street, there's a bunch of churches on that street, right? Like, is that there's like a bunch of denominations.
This is a wonderful thing to have.
Yeah.
Because what was at one time 10th Street in Oak Cliff was seen as the most church street in the United States.
In the United States?
In the United States. In
Whoa.
fact, Robert Ripley, actually did an article about Ripley's Believe It or Not, the 10th Street.
Just churches.
It's only 3 miles long, but all along, and they're still there. They went at one end from Calvary Baptist all the way down, and this what we don't realize is 10th Street got severed by
100%.
I-35,
right.
And there was this wonderful Freedmen's community,
Yes,
this 10th Street now historic district, and there were
churches there.
There were 4 or 5 very large, predominantly black churches that were there, and so that 1 3-mile stretch was. You were right. It was.
Okay.
It was.
That's amazing. All the different churches along that street. Because I mean, when you go down it, you see a lot of churches.
You still do.
Yeah, you still do.
Cliff Temple Baptist.
Yeah, of course.
And
that one feels like the Vatican to me. It's just massive.
we have always, as at Tyler Street, we have always been in stiff competition with Cliff Temple Baptist.
Nice. Yeah, there you go.
They often win.
Oh, okay.
Even when I was like in the 7th grade and was playing church league softball, we just couldn't beat them.
So they were good, huh?
I still hold it against them.
As
I love
you should.
I love them. I love that.
That's right.
Is there a basketball court up in that one, or is there
at Tyler Street? It's a five-story building.
I've heard about
and at
this.
the very top is a gymnasium with
Really?
a basketball court.
It's awesome.
Oh, wow. We need to go over and pay a visit
Come
sometime.
over and play, but don't
Yeah.
come on a 100-degree day because there's no air conditioning.
All that hot air rising, huh?
Yeah.
Well, Fred, you mentioned World War II. I
Yeah.
think that's a good segue in some ways to our author, at least for today. We're going to talk about C.S. Lewis and the Chronicles of Narnia. As we said, Fred is the head of the C.S. Lewis Institute here in Dallas, and so he knows a thing or two about Lewis and Narnia, and Lewis, who was deeply impacted by World War I and World War II. So,
and when we're thinking about the summer reading club, we don't necessarily have like, hey, the Silver Chair or the Last Battle. Like, it's not necessarily a book, but we were like, hey, this guy is in charge of the C.S. Lewis Institute. We know Narnia is something we want to talk about. We've read the series. I feel like that's an awesome one for the summer to go through and one we super enjoy. So this unfortunately could be like a 3 to 4 hour episode.
I know we might be doing part 2. We'll see.
But yeah, Narnia. I mean, where do we start even, Grant, on some of this? I feel like.
Well, Fred, I think I'd be curious to maybe from your vantage point to hear a little bit about C.S. Lewis as a person and maybe your interest in Lewis and also a little biographical information about the guy Clive Staples that we all enjoy reading.
Yeah. Well, I'll do my best. It's hard to keep it short.
Even
this amount may take the 2.
That's all right.
Take that length of time. But Lewis is a fascinating man. Born in 1898 in Northern Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
Died on November the 22nd, 1963, the very date that John Kennedy was assassinated.
Right.
And probably his death, because he was quite famous, would have been quite well documented.
Right.
Had it not been for President Kennedy's assassination.
Did Huxley die that day too?
Yes.
Aldous Huxley died that day.
Huxley died.
Yeah.
Those 3 died on the exact November 22nd, 1963. In between 1898 and 1963, Lewis lived a fascinating life. He grew up early on had an idyllic childhood in Northern Ireland until his mother contracted cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And he truly believed that she would be healed. He was told that if he prayed that she would be healed. She wasn't. And she died, and this had a tremendous impact on him, even more so because of the reaction of his father. His father, always somewhat distant, became quite detached in real ways. And in fact, within a few days, perhaps a week or two, had sent both Warnie and Jack. I mean, that's what he went by. Warnie and Jack off to boarding schools.
Wow.
Most of which time was horrendous for those boys, and particularly for Jack, and shaped them in ways. Some of it was extremely good, but most of it was.
How old was he during this time? I mean, is it?
I think he died. I think Lewis was 9. I think when his mother died. Yeah,
extraordinarily formative.
Yeah.
Okay, boarding school.
He went off, and then went to. In his last experience, had tremendous experience, learned greatly, and then intended to go to Oxford, wanted to go to Oxford, probably could not have gotten into Oxford because he couldn't pass the math exams.
Interesting.
However, it was in World War I, and they desperately needed people not only who would come to Oxford, but who could be trained as officers.
Wow.
So he went to Oxford, was trained in military, went into World War I.
Yeah.
Another horrible formative experience, not only for him, but for an entire generation, particularly of Europeans, but of British as well. It was in the long run, the destruction of that whole idea that we're just making progress and everything is going well. And,
right.
It left people just bereft. And he was wounded in battle, came home, and dealt with all of that. In the process of all of this, had already become an atheist and was a very both clear-headed and committed atheist in those ways. However, somehow, in the midst of all of that, as he began reading and as he began dealing with other people, particularly as he went to Oxford and began teaching there at Oxford now in medieval and Renaissance English literature.
Which was his specialty, right?
It's absolutely his specialty. He absolutely became the premier scholar on medieval and Renaissance English literature in the world.
Yeah.
And in fact, his book, English Literature of the 16th Century, excluding drama, is still the standard by which anyone else would judge English.
Wow.
Became a literary critic. He
rose up.
So as a scholar,
as a scholar, he was unsurpassed. I mean, just truly so. But as he was doing that, he began meeting people and reading things that they would give him. And he, at one point, he says, anyone who is a committed atheist and wants to remain so cannot be too careful at all about what they read.
That's a pretty good.
Oh, that's a good
line, actually.
But he
just read broadly.
As he read, and as he interacted with a number of his friends, I would say right at the heart of the name that would most be known as J.R.R. Tolkien.
Right.
Who they were
famously Catholic,
famously Christian, but they were dear friends and were friends from the earliest days of Oxford on through their lives. Not that they didn't have disagreements or falling outs or other things.
Yeah,
they always disagreed on, both of them fantasy writers, but both of disagreed on what good fantasy was, and sometimes
the style, even
style exactly. But he slowly became first a theist, and then finally, ultimately, a Christian. And he, I just love how he puts his own conversion in. He talks about one day riding to the zoo, the London Zoo, on a motorcycle in the sidecar. I think it was with Warnie. And he says, "All I know is that as we were going to the zoo, I did not believe, and when I came back, I did. And I
the zoo. The zoo.
And it's so anticlimactic. It's like
but it's remarkable.
It is remarkable.
I mean, he's just sitting there thinking in the car, and it all comes together.
Yeah,
and in fact, it's not a change that he actively sought at all.
Right.
In fact, he calls himself the most reluctant convert.
Yes.
And he, on the night of what he would call his conversion, he said he felt like he was the most dejected convert in the history of that.
Being dragged, kicking and screaming into
it's like riding the dart to the Dallas Zoo.
Yeah, that's right. Before you go.
Well, he's deeply shaped and formed both by his love of literature and shaped by his Christian faith. And out of that comes this enormous wealth of material that goes from very philosophical, just pure reason type books to the most imaginative books you can find. In the rest of his career, he wrote. I love this statistic. He wrote 73 books. 56 of them he wrote while he was alive.
Oh,
so after he died, people
yeah.
started collecting things and making books out of things he had written and other things.
That is funny.
But people will remember the names of Mere Christianity and the Screw Tape Letters and most particularly the Chronicles of Narnia or The Great Divorce. And then he has all of these wonderful books on literary criticism and on English literature. So,
Fred, take us, like, I think when we were talking about the show and for this summer reading club, we were like, the obvious choice is Narnia. You know, how do you get people into this series? Like, it's so fantastical and easy to pick up and enjoyable. And also, we're all getting ready for the Netflix special, too.
Let's be real. It's coming out.
Some of us a little bit nervously, but we're...
That's right.
Hey, more Narnia.
See how it goes.
Meryl Streep in Narnia Land.
I'm going to see it. I'm going to see it.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's going to be interesting. But no, just going into Narnia, tell us, for people who haven't ever read or picked up this fantasy series, what is Narnia? Like, what?
Yeah.
Set the stage for us. Yeah.
Of course, Narnia. It's actually 7 books.
Yes, yeah.
They're all short. They're all written for children, but not only for children. Mm-hmm. And this is very key for him. And so, if I'm recommending them, I recommend them wholeheartedly for parents to read to their children, for grandparents to read to their children. What could you do better in the summer than that if you're going to do that?
Summer activity.
But I recommend
just picking it up and reading
picking them up and reading them. And in fact, I'm asked more by adult groups who really want to come into Narnia and they're not talking about for their children or grandchildren. They're talking about for themselves to read them. And that's a point that he makes, that he never, ever wrote only for children. He wrote books that children could enjoy, but intended that they should be for everyone, for adults as well. In fact, I think it'd be remiss not to read the dedication.
Let's read it.
To the whole Narnia series, but to the very first book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And he dedicates the book to his goddaughter, Lucy Barlow. She is fairly young at that time. Now, this is just in the series, one of the loveliest and the greatest heroines in the whole thing is the little girl Lucy.
Right. Yeah. And she's the youngest of the Pevensey kids.
She's the young, exactly. Yeah. But not only... To me, it's always been, I've always sensed, and I don't know that he ever said it anywhere, but obviously this Lucy and that Lucy are meant to be somewhat the same.
Right.
And he's writing something delightfully for his granddaughter Lucy with her in it. Yeah. But also it's aspirational for her. Yeah. This is what...
Optimistic.
This is the person. This is what we want to be. But this is what he writes to his goddaughter Lucy. Dear Lucy, I wrote this story for you, but when I began it, I had not realized that girls grow quicker than books. As a result, isn't that good? As a result, you are already too old for fairy tales, and by the time it is printed and bound, you will be older still. But someday, you will be old enough to start reading fairy tales again. You can then take it down from the upper shelf, dust it, and tell me what you think of it. I shall probably be too deaf to hear and too old to understand a word you say, but I shall still be your affectionate godfather, C.S. Lewis.
How good is
now,
that?
How are you going to do better than that?
That's really good, right?
Perfect.
How can you do
That's
better?
Perfect.
How can you do better than that? So,
no, it's awesome.
That key phrase in there, someday you'll be old enough to read fairy tales again.
Yeah.
What Lewis believed about fairy tales, and I think what Tolkien did too, was that they were not an escape from something or to something, that in fact they took you into they took you into a different realm where you could see reality maybe clearer than you were seeing it back here, but you could see it and understand it, and then you could transport it back here. And in fact, in the third, actually it's the fourth book, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader.
Okay.
I don't know. I can't remember
which
one it is.
Yeah. I feel like they always get switched around too, don't they?
There's different debates about the organization of it, but
about which to read second and all of that sort of thing. But he says something. The grand hero of the whole story, Aslan, the lion, says to Lucy, in essence, I only brought you here. I only brought you here so that by being here for a little while, and I'm going to put a little different than he said it. He says, so that you can know me better there.
Yeah.
But what he's really saying, I brought you here for a little while so that by being here, you can live better there.
Yeah.
So that's underneath. That's
a little magic.
That's why the fantasy is not escape from, but it's a living in reality that helps us see reality better and enjoy ourselves while doing it at the same time.
It's almost as if he's saying in your what you think is your day-to-day reality, you're actually missing a deeper reality that I want to show you through these stories.
Yeah, that's it.
And go read these stories, and you'll experience that deeper reality more fully in your day-to-day life, I guess. Is that a right way to say it?
I think that's exactly what he.
So it makes sense why that's a thing that adults can benefit from. Cause
absolutely.
Nobody gets more jaded than an adult who's gone through some 9 to 5 things in their life, and kids have a way of that childlike wonder, and that can dissipate as you get older. Yeah, and you almost need to recover it as an adult.
And he says something else that's just about like that. He talks about how he considers fantasy and this sort of thing a means by which to get beyond the watchful dragons that keep us from seeing, that there are dragons that keep us from seeing reality as it is, the depths of reality, other things as it is. But as fantasy, we let our guard down.
Right.
And that's an interesting way to put it. Yeah. Because there's evils in the world. There's like things that just will wear us down. But this allows you to kind of live in that sphere for a little bit. And
and whereas your reason is going to be defensive against ideas.
There's no dragons.
The imagination. You can sneak past that reason a little bit with stories.
With the imagination.
When you have talking rats and
you put your guard down, like Fred says.
That is.
Well, you said point
about Narnia itself, it is an entirely different world.
Yeah,
entered into with human beings entering into it, invited into it. In fact, they're almost compelled into it. They're dragged into it in a sense, or drawn into it. That may be from the beginning of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. 4 young children are who have been evacuated from London because of the Blitz. This would have been 1940. This would have been so, and they have to go and stay in a place that would be safer. And they come to a country place with an old professor. That old professor has an enormous house, but they have, in one room, they have this wardrobe that they keep being drawn to in one way or another.
Yeah.
And then somehow drawn through the back of that wardrobe and find themselves entering a different world. It is a world. It is a world that they are now going to discover. But if you had been there, if you were part of that world, what you would have known you were part of is a world that had been created beautifully, that had been created perfectly and lovingly, but somehow had fallen under a terrible curse, or terrible reign of the White Witch, of a White Witch, who's, as this is where reality begins to, who is, I mean, if there's a definition of a narcissist there, we can just but it's all, everything is about her and about her control and about all of that. And the world that has been created by her is a world of ice and cold and snow. In fact, the key line in the whole thing is, in Narnia now, it is always winter and never Christmas. It's just a beautiful line.
What a torturous existence.
Always winter, never Christmas.
That's the only thing that we look forward to during the winter.
But Narnia itself is a fascinating place because it is a world that's filled with both humans but talking animals who are. It's not just that they talk. It's really that they are characters. They are characters, and they have consciousness. They have, in a sense, human dignity, or whatever, and a place of talking trees and witches and you name it.
You got things in Turkish delight. It's everything. It's all
you name it. But in that land, what they are, even though they are now suffering under this, they have prophecies, and the prophecies are one, when the creator of that world, the great lion Aslan, returns, he will put everything right. And the book begins with a beaver saying, in essence, and we've just heard Aslan is on the move.
Right.
That is, he's on his way back. But at the same time, there's another prophecy, and that is that all of this will take place when two sons of Adam and 2 daughters of Eve are also here and sit on the thrones of the kingdom at the palace. Cair Paravel. From that point
read some Narnia.
I mean, let's go.
From that point on, the story, the witch truly believes. She may not be able to do much about Aslan, but if she can stop those kids, that it will
slow down.
It'll slow down, or just keep it. The prophecy will not be met. At first, she
can stop it.
Wants to get all 4 of them. Later, she'll settle for one. She thinks that'll do it. But at that point, you could just say, like in a Sherlock Holmes, from that point on, the game is afoot. And he is, but it is Aslan on the move. It is the children moving toward him. It's the witch trying to get to the others, and the way it is tremendously and beautifully resolved. It's a glorious story.
Yeah.
And this is what Lucy tumbles in from the wardrobe.
Yes.
Unaware of all of the drama that's already happening in Narnia, but she stumbles in there and sees a fawn carrying some parcels across a snowy forest under a lamppost. Is kind
under
of
a lamp. That's
sort
under
of the
a
first thing she sees.
The very first thing she sees.
Yeah.
And most people probably, if they're somewhat familiar with the story, it's probably from the movies too, right? Like I think thinking of the Oak Cliff audience,
Definitely.
That's probably the most popular thing is the movies in the last few years.
Yeah, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, I think, was the first of the movies to be made in like modern times. I know there's been a few iterations of it.
There's the BBC one, which is wild.
Right, it is crazy. If you want to go down a rabbit trail.
Oh, someone sent us. Have you seen those?
I
Fred?
have not seen the BBC
Oh my
ones.
goodness! It is like animal fur suits and like
it's
they're
pretty
just getting crazy. But
feels very 80s.
Something I could see at like Texas Theaters, like Trash Tuesday.
100%. Yeah,
the BBC version of
that's
Narnia.
Funny. But yeah, the movies. I mean, there's a few like you mentioned, a new one coming out. Some of them deviate quite a bit from the story. Some of them, are pretty close. So
I feel like the most recent ones, Voyage of the Dawn Treader, right? There's some of those.
Yeah, there's Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I think. What's the other one that just
Prince Caspian?
Prince Caspian.
So they
came
made
out, right?
3.
Yeah, that's right.
Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. I think they did a superb job on.
Yeah,
yeah, that's right. I think it was pretty close to the
very close.
Yeah.
The reputation of Prince
tell us.
Caspian is not very good.
Okay. Yeah.
That
they tried to make it too Hollywood kind of or was it like?
I think what they tend to do, or often, is actually change the import of the book, so that if the books all have to do with meaning, what does something mean? They actually, in view of creating new action and other things, or things that will draw people into action, they
import
they export the meaning
for something else.
For something, or deport it. I don't know what you're
right. Yeah, it's definitely changed.
Well,
so that's right.
It's good to know that the first one was well received. The other ones a little less so. I'm sure you guys have talked about this in the Institute.
A little bit, but and it's my understanding the Voyage of the Dawn Treader is fairly well done. There are some changes in it that actually just sort of change what Lewis would have wanted as
the characters develop.
Okay,
that's interesting.
Yeah. But I would highly recommend the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Oh yeah, and I'm trying to think for people who've never heard of Narnia.
Yeah,
they've probably maybe seen some of the movies or heard of the movies. I mean, the books are.
Yeah, it's helpful maybe to lay out the Chronicles of Narnia. Really does go from creation to the end of Narnia.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so it's a long, big history, and there's these vignettes basically where the characters are dropped into different time periods and have these adventures with, the talking mouse Reepicheep, or other characters come in like Eustace Scrubs, who almost what's the line? He almost deserved to be named that too, or something. It was he's got a pretty terrible name, and he almost deserved it, or something like that.
Yeah, that's the very beginning of the Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I think it's just lovely. There was a boy called Eustace Clarence Scrub, and he almost deserved it.
It's so bad. But I mean, you have these.
His parents called him Eustace Clarence, and masters called him Scrubs. I can't tell you what his friends spoke to him, for he had none.
Right. Oh, right.
Oh man, what a description. Well, and I think too,
he becomes one of our favorites because of the transformation that takes place in his life, and he becomes a real hero all the way through.
That's right. In this being, I mean, you might see this during the summer reading club and be like, 7 books, you guys are wild, but like they're so easy to read. I think that's the other part of this too. Is it's not Lord of the Rings.
No,
or
you're not making a Lord of the Rings commitment.
Harry Potter series, it's like these are pretty quick reads.
They are
enjoyable. And takes you into a good world.
It
in
does.
a way that's like not crazy time consuming too.
Yeah, they're generally a light read. You're not going to have to really focus hard on. Even the audiobooks are great.
Yeah,
which that's what I've listened to most recently, and you can just throw those on, and they're it's an easy story to listen to.
I would agree.
Would recommend
wholeheartedly. They take no time to.
Yeah, you could do it. Really quickly.
Very quickly.
That's awesome.
So we've talked Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, and as you were saying, they actually do go from creation to the very end of time in Narnia.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that I think that in terms of human time, they cover the creation one happens like in 1900.
Yeah.
The others happen over a 4 or 5 year period from 1940 to 1946 or 7, something like that.
Oh, okay.
But in Narnian time, they happen from creation to the last battle, which is the last one, is 2,555 years.
Oh, is
the last
it okay?
battle is 2,000
yes,
years?
it's fascinating.
Wow.
Actually,
I did not know that time-wise.
2,550. There's the creation one.
Yeah.
Then 1,000 years later is the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and the Horse and His Boy. They both fit in there. You go another 1,000 years, and you come to the next book, Prince Caspian, and then the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and then the Silver Chair. All three, one of the central figures is Prince Caspian.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then finally, another 250 years or so later is the last battle.
Okay.
If
That's wild. Yeah.
We only know this for sure because after he died, and you can guess this because Tolkien and Lewis would be both this way. When they create a world, they create a world.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They found in his notes an actual chronology of Narnia
that's pretty
that has the Narnian side.
That's amazing.
And the human side.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Verified.
Well, and
Verified.
it's funny. Lewis and Tolkien, I feel like you mentioned this earlier, had slightly different perspectives on how to write a story like this. And I always find it funny to think about how Tolkien, his entire story is airtight. I mean, he basically answers every question, leaves. There's no room for any sort of inaccuracy or I mean,
paradox,
he develops a whole language
to
to go with, and he writes these massive volumes of history about this world. And then Lewis, on the other hand, will just sprinkle in a little bit of whatever he wants to keep the kids happy. Like Santa Claus pays a visit.
Yeah, he does.
Crazy.
And it bothered Tolkien so much because he just couldn't. He was like, "What do you mean Santa Claus?
Like Santa's in Narnia? What's
what are
happening?
you doing?"
Yeah, but that's exactly right. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. But it's the answer, in a sense, to that theme. It's always winter and never Christmas.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, in Narnia, what would they know about Christmas?
Exactly.
But all of a sudden, as the snow begins to thaw, here does come Father Christmas.
Yeah, Father Christmas.
There's Santa Claus.
Oh, that's fascinating.
It's very.
I could see that pissing Tolkien off.
Oh, it did.
100%.
It did.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, like Lewis praised Tolkien's, Lord of the Rings, and really helped him encourage to publish it.
Okay.
I mean, and finish it. And meanwhile, Tolkien was kind of like, okay, about the whole Narnia world. I mean, they were dear friends, and
they were extraordinarily dear friends, and met together at least weekly, as you know, and the Inklings were at a pub with several other members.
We've been able to go visit it. The Eagle Child. It's fun.
So, Fred, we've talked about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about a few of the other books. Are there any characters that you particularly love in the Chronicles of Narnia that you'd want to mention, and then maybe any, I don't know, overarching themes that you think are enticing for somebody who's considering reading this?
Yeah, if you have some of my favorite characters are one is Lucy.
Yeah,
she's
awesome.
The youngest but she is also the one who is the absolute most compassionate and caring.
Mm-hmm.
And the one who is most trusting of Aslan and most desirous to follow him, and most sorry when she does not. But over and over and over again, she comes across in that beautiful way in every story she's in. A second one, though, is her brother Edmund.
Right. Yep.
And Edmund is the one who, that was read about Eustace, that in spades could have been said about Edmund, because he was, in essence, coming into Narnia, I mean, I would describe him as a bully.
Yeah.
He was using, he always wanted to put his little sister down.
Yep.
Yeah.
He was jealous of his older brother and his older brother's position, and in the end, out of all of that, he's the one that the White Witch was able to sort of woo to herself and help him to become an actual traitor, to actually turn in his brothers and sisters and to turn against Aslan to be supportive of her. However, it's the White Witch that turns on him, and he, in deep repentance, is brought back to Aslan. There's this glorious scene that we don't even, where Aslan and Edmund walk together, and no one knows what they said. But when they come back, Aslan says, "Here's your brother. Take him back. No one needs to know what we've been talking about, and no one needs to do anything." And Edmund says, "I really am sorry." And they say, "It's all right." Well, there's a lot more to it than that. Aslan now is going to have to give his own life for Edmund's, but that's more of the story. But the main thing that happens is that Edmund is now transformed and becomes actually over and over again the hero, who he's the one who actually slays the witch.
Right.
Yeah.
He is the one who, from then on, and this is what I most love about him, anytime there is somebody who needs a second chance, Edmund's the one who's going to give him the second chance.
He's the first one to pop up for that, because he knows it.
And my favorite line that he ever says is Eustace, when he, who deserved his name, when he turns and in essence repents and is sorry for him suing, he says how bad he was. Edmund says to him, "You know, that's all right. You're forgiven. You can go on." He said, "But I want you to know this. You shouldn't feel near as bad as you do, because you were only an ass. I was a traitor." And you get that sense over and over again. He's the one ready to. He's the one ready to take others back, to bring them in.
He's quick to forgive because he's needed that grace.
Because he's been there. He needed the grace himself, and so I love Edmund for that reason.
He becomes Edmund the Just too, right? Is that his title?
That's exactly right.
Yeah. The traitor becomes Edmund the Just. Yeah, how about that?
That's exactly right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And then again, Eustace. I love Eustace for the same, in a sense, for the same reason. He is transformed from this person. You see him going through a deep repentance, in which he's brought to by the fact that he actually physically becomes what he is internally.
Right.
He becomes a dragon.
A dragon, yeah.
That's awesome.
The line is, when it happens, a person who sleeps on dragons' wealth and dreams dragon thoughts will become that. And so that's what Eustace did. But again, there is this enormous repentance and change, and from then on, he becomes a hero. But there's another beautiful little paragraph in The Voyage of the Dawn Treader where it talks about his transformation. It says, and I think this is hopeful for all of us, it says, one would like to say that from that point on he was absolutely perfect or that he did right. He says, but that's not the case.
Yeah.
He did lapse from time to time. He says, but the key thing is the change had begun.
Wow.
And so the change had begun. He was moving. So cool. I love Eustace. And I will tell you, almost who keeps reading from The Voyage of the Dawn Treader on, I think if I'm ever talking to anybody, one of their favorite characters of all time is the mouse Reepicheep.
Yeah, he's a fun one.
Yeah, he is one of the Three Musketeers.
Yeah.
In essence.
Yeah.
Except here's an interesting thing. He is the epitome of what that sort of musketeer should have been. The fact is, Lewis did not like the book, The Three Musketeers.
Oh, fascinating. Okay.
And when I read it,
who is it? Who wrote that?
Alexander Dumas.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, okay.
And what he didn't like about it, when I first read The Three Musketeers, I loved it. I was a teenage boy, and it's just swashbuckling.
Yeah.
But when I read it as an adult, it was nothing but a bunch of grown-up adolescents behaving badly.
That's interesting.
That all of a sudden but in Reepicheep, it's the same sort of knightly behavior, but devoted to.
Again, optimistic and noble,
and noble.
Almost
He's
in a way,
optimistic. It's noble. It's devotion to a cause. It's everything.
Yeah. Real courage.
Yeah.
Kind of
it's just delightful.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and that's interesting hearing Lewis's thoughts on Alexander or like Three Musketeers, because I feel like we've had this conversation with Dune, right? Is it Tolkien or Lewis that didn't like the Dune series a lot?
I think it was Tolkien who didn't care for it as much.
Okay.
And again, that goes back to
it's like a world building and like the thoughts behind creating these worlds.
Well, and Lewis and Tolkien and Lewis too. I mean, really, they don't have heroes in the traditional sense, or at least the heroes are always kind of ordinary people. Yeah. No, go. That seems to be their kind of their guiding principle when they're writing these stories. And I think in Dune,
it was,
you got a prophet rising from, there's a little
chosen one,
and there's some differences I think philosophically there for them, but you always have the hero or one of the heroes failing miserably. That's kind of like you think about Lord of the Rings. Frodo fails. He doesn't get the ring to the to Mount Doom, but by a happy chance, like Gollum rips his finger off and the ring is destroyed.
Super happy.
Yeah, that's kind of, and again, Eustace is another good example. Edmund, I mean, there's a lot of human failure, but courage too, and ordinary courage from ordinary people. So
that's a wonderful ordinary courage from ordinary people. And that, I think that many things I've read from both of them would actually say that's exactly what they were trying to do. Was that the world has changed by small people and small living out their
ordinary life. It doesn't have to be this insane thing that you're going to go do. It's like, no, this is regular people doing regular life and
small people.
Yeah.
Hobbits are small people.
Physically small.
They're physically small. Or you have a mouse who's doing, or in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, two of most people's favorite characters are Mr. and Mrs. Beaver.
Yeah, that's right.
In essence, they are just they almost speak with a Cockney accent.
Yeah, they do.
As you're listening as you listen to them talk back and forth, and their whole role is they protect these 4 kids,
right,
and they transport them to Aslan.
That's cool.
And, I mean, in a sense, the most important role.
That's how are you going to be more important than that?
Right. Wow.
That's awesome. All I know is in high school I got called Tumnus.
That's a compliment, Doug.
Is it?
Don't worry.
I'll take it. No. I said my hair looked like the Tumnus. I was like, great. Thanks, y'all.
It's funny.
They didn't call you that because you ran around with your shirt off.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
No, or had horse legs.
Well, Narnia, it's a fun world to dive into. Any last
if someone's
thoughts or
made
invitations
it this far in the episode, it's like,
and maybe has no clue about any of this, and it's just
how do you sell them on it? What's the parting last reason to read this thing?
They're fun to read.
Yeah,
they are.
Enjoyable.
I think they really are wonderful. They are light but deep.
Yeah,
they're light but deep.
Yeah,
they are fun to read, and I don't think you can read them without coming out being in somewhat a better person for having having done it, because what's being brought into our lives are deep purpose, courage, love, mercy, all of these tremendous, vitally important to us virtues or characteristics, and they become, and I think almost as we read them, almost by osmosis, we become more that ourselves. So I honestly would recommend read it to your children, read it to your grandchildren, read it yourself, because it is
awesome.
It's wonderful.
We're big fans of Lewis and Tolkien, so
it's good stuff.
I feel like, we're explaining this author in this series, but also, Fred, you've been in Oak Cliff for so long. How can people follow along with the C.S. Lewis Institute, or how do they connect with you? Like, I feel like this is one of those episodes that's kind of both and introducing you, but also the story.
We would love them to. We would love to get to know them. What we do, we are primarily not a front men for C.S. Lewis. Our first responsibility and what we're in for is we are a discipling ministry. We are a Christian discipling ministry, and we tell people our primary task is not to create fans of C.S. Lewis, but to create hopefully 1,000 people who are like him, who are so completely devoted in their heart and life to Christ that they are living out that devotion in their own sphere, in their own way, in their own sphere of influence, wherever they might be. Now we say that, but we also, even though we're not here to create fans of C.S. Lewis, we are never upset when we do. And I'm thrilled to death to create a fan of C.S. Lewis. People can find us just by going online, www.cslewisinstitute.org, and it's a national organization, but but we've been around for 50 years, but 10 years we've been here in Dallas.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
I love that.
That's great.
Cool.
Well, Fred, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah,
this has been
Fred.
wonderful.
Good to chat.
I loved it.
It was awesome.
It was a lot of fun.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Hidden City. We hope you discovered something about Oak Cliff that you didn't know. If you enjoyed the show, I hope you subscribe to it on YouTube and then follow us on any of the podcasting platforms. Also, if you enjoyed it, please share with a friend, and thanks so much for tuning in.